Hey, what's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in today's video. Today I actually want to talk about what it means when I say to paint organically, or whenever I use organic in the context of painting. Now, the reason I'm doing this video is because as a teacher, I try to teach things in an as accessible way possible so that they're actually understandable. However, I have my blind spot, so very often I'll use terminology that maybe does not mean anything to other people, or the meaning isn't clear. And I actually got this question from a follower here in a comment, so I want to show you. The question was, and this is again the catalyst for this video, asked by Scars1951, what is organic? It does not compute with me. With me it means nothing artificial. So I'm gonna read the answer that I wrote and then I'm gonna expand upon it. Hopefully that makes sense, because it is an important concept and it will improve your watercolor results. So my answer was yes, I probably use it in a very personally interpreted way, haha. I usually do mean the opposite of artificial. When I say organic colors, I mean something like natural, harmonious, looks good together. When it's in the context of shapes and composition, I think I mean a natural looking shape, not too rigid or bound by what I see in the reference, but perhaps a little idealized and simplified for the viewer's enjoyment. I hope that makes sense. Haha, again. So here's the thing. And this was a comment on my recent video, sorry, move the camera, on my recent video for the How to Simplify course with the gondolas, beautiful, beautiful scene. And here's the thing, when I mean it in the context of shapes, which is really what I want to expand upon, you have the option of trying to follow the reference photo exactly to the T, trying to recreate it as it is. If you're good at it, what you'll end up with is a beautiful, hyper-realistic, photorealistic result, like you see some artists do, like Thierry Duval. You can follow him on Instagram. Beautiful paintings, super realistic, really detailed, and that's one way of approaching this. On the other end of the spectrum, you have a lot of artistic freedom, and you can change a lot of things. Now, why would you change things? I discussed this in the How to Simplify course. I talk about it a lot. In order to make the experience better for the viewer, in order to make the process easier for yourself, in order to create a process that you enjoy more. Time constraints, like painting plein air. But I do want to focus on one thing, and that is creating a fun and pleasurable experience for the viewer. Because what I find is that if I just draw things exactly the way they are, I lose a lot of that accessibility for the viewer. So let me give you an idea. Let's say I'm painting these gondolas. Now, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of a shape of a gondola? You might say banana, because really the shape is just like a banana. So that curve is the main thing that is there. Within that, there are some details. You know, there's the structure, there's the way everything is connected, which creates different bumps and different shapes along the contours. However, the main thing that comes to mind is that rounded shape. So what I'm going to do when I paint a gondola is I'm going to focus on that rounded shape. It's always going to be there. It's going to be the gesture. It's going to be the underlying theme. I'm going to prioritize that over all the smaller details within the gondola. And this is the point. I took that shape that was based on a photo, from a photo, and the photo is, of course, it's loyal to the source as much as possible in terms of shapes. Of course, there's some skewing, there's some perspective going on in the edges of the camera lens, but generally speaking, the proportions are the same as in the reference photo. And what I did is I idealized it. I focused on the main thing, the main idea of the gondola, and that way it registers better for the viewer. Of course, it will register great if you're doing it photorealistically. It will just look like a photo, but if I personally want to create a pleasurable viewing experience for the viewer that entices them to see more into the nuances of what I'm painting and not look at it at face value, that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to change some things around and focus on the motif, the main idea of the shape. And to me, that's what makes a shape more organic. This is how I use the word organic in the context of shapes. I am not bound by the reference photo or by reality itself, but rather I'm set free from it to draw the thing in whichever way I want, to focus on whatever big idea, big motif that I want, and that leads it to become a more organic shape. That is the point. And this is quite a talkative video. I hope you still enjoy it. That is the point of organic shapes. They need to feel good as a part of the entire scene rather than separate elements and you can sometimes get it to work, again, if you go for full realism. But sometimes what you'll end up doing is you'll try and get this thing accurate and that thing accurate and this thing accurate, and when you zoom out, it doesn't work together. It doesn't work together as one big painting. The idea of organic is to idealize the scene in a way that will also have it work well together. And that means reducing some details from one area in order to provide more in a different area, and that way you control the viewer's attention and all of those good things when it comes to shapes and compositions. Now, colors, I think, is a little more straightforward. Let's address that as well. When I talk about organic looking colors, what I usually mean is, and you've seen this in my recent live stream session where I showed you the same scene in multiple different iterations of light and shadow, and you notice how the more overcast light provides more local natural colors, meaning the grass is green, the stones are gray, the sky is blue, the colors are relatively kind of, or gray, the sky was overcast, so gray. The colors are very similar to the perfect light condition in reality. When you look at a more atmospheric scene, like against the light, during a hazy weather, during a rainy weather even, what happens is it affects all the light and shadow in the scene. So what this leads to is all the colors kind of narrow down and belong to a similar family of grays and slight warms and slight blues, but it contracts. And this is what leads to organic look. Let me try and explain it a bit more in a different way. The way I always talk about organic colors is I say I'm going to minimize my palette. Just 3 colors. Now, this actually more closely mimics reality, because when you have any given light and shadow conditions, they affect the entire scene. So the water, for example, will have a bit of the color of the sky. The rocks on the sides of a river will have some of that blue reflected on them. There is literally some of the water's blue on the rocks. There is, when I'm filming this video, there is a bit of a blue hint from my cutting board. Okay, and you will actually notice this. If you look at this, I'm going to show you live. These are notes from my latest live stream session. Look at the paper. It's white. Now, as soon as I put that palette knife next to it, you see that warmth? It's not just a shadow. It's actually a reddish shadow. I hope that makes sense. The things influence each other in the scene. And what's a surefire way of making sure that even if you don't adhere to the exact colors you see, they still feel like they influence each other? To minimize your color palette. Because then you have the same yellow in the rocks as exactly as you have in the grass, exactly as you have in different parts of the scene, in the sky even, if you mix it a bit with blue. This is why I love the minimal palette. I love using fewer colors because it immediately leads to a harmonious combination, and immediately you have some of the sky reflected in the rocks, and some of the everything is every part, every color contains a small part of the different other colors of the scene. And that, to me, is a more organic look. Now, this is, I should have mentioned this at the start of the video, this is subjective. This is how I view the word organic. You may have a different way of viewing it, but generally speaking, organic in the context of colors, as I just explained, is to have all of the colors work together and feel like one part of a family, and for the whole scene to look like that, to have that unified impression, that unified look, what Alvaro Castaneda calls in one of his DVDs, togetherness, or, you know, using the same family of colors. So I hope that makes sense. With time, you'll slowly learn what colors you can add on and still preserve that feeling of a same family of colors. So this is basically everything I wanted to talk about today. This is how I view the word organic. Hopefully, if you didn't want to listen to the whole thing, you got the main value when I read my comment. But this really got me to think, okay, the word organic is very ethereal, it's very meta. It's not really, it doesn't mean anything, it's very subjective. So I wanted to share that with you. And again, in the context of shapes, it's mostly idealizing and changing things to create a more interesting and fun and pleasurable experience for the viewer, immediately registering what they're looking at. And in the context of colors, it's having that one family of colors. One thing I learned is how to slowly add more colors to that. So I learned that yellow ochre works really well with phthalo green, works really well with quinacridone violet, with French ultramarine. All of these colors that seem to be not that related actually work really well together. So this is my approach to organic, and if you follow what I just said in the video, you will get better results. Now, it doesn't mean that this is how you should paint. Maybe you enjoy doing a different thing with your colors. Maybe you enjoy using just one or two colors. Maybe you paint monochromatically. Maybe you paint photorealistically. Doesn't matter. But try and have that in mind and maybe experiment. Try it out. Try using just fewer colors, seeing how that leads to a more organic look. Try idealizing shapes and see how that leads to a more organic look in the shapes and composition. And it takes practice, it will take time, but try seeing even my videos from that lens. And I'll try to also better explain the words I'm using and the concepts I'm using. I hope that makes sense. I really want to thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out two things. My How to Simplify course, completely free here on YouTube. Comes out a new episode every Saturday. And also, if you just want to binge watch the whole thing, go over to Udemy. I will include links below. Now, the other thing is a paid course. It is my frustration-free watercolor course. If you're having trouble letting go, enjoying the process, painting freely, having fun, which is something I hope to cover more in upcoming videos, be sure to check that out. You don't have to. I'm really grateful if you do. All the value is here in the video, in the free videos. You can find everything. It's just a bit of a more structured approach. I am working on another course for you, okay? Another paid course. We'll probably discuss values. We'll see about that. It's still in the making, still brewing it and figuring out how I want to tackle it. I want it to be really great and to solve that problem for people. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you again in the next vid.